Welcome to this overview of qualitative research methods. I'm a professor with the School of Social Work at Michigan State University, where I teach research methods and proposal writing. My own research focuses on Alzheimer's patients and their family caregivers, in which I have used qualitative research methods and mixed methods. So in this series of lectures, I will draw examples from my previous research to help you understand qualitative research methods. To start with, the goal of this workshop is to help you understand qualitative research approaches and concepts so that you can determine whether qualitative research method fits your research project. And if so, how to design and implement a qualitative research project. Specifically, I will cover 4 modules, including what is qualitative research, how to write good qualitative research questions, what are common qualitative data collection approaches, and what a rigorous qualitative data analysis look like. In this lecture, we'll cover data collection approach in qualitative research design. Specifically, we'll talk about sampling strategies, data collection and recording approaches, and qualitative research ethics in data collection. Since the purpose of qualitative research is not to seek representativeness or generalizability, the common sampling strategy used are non-probability sampling. That means not every person in this study population has an equal or known probability to be selected. Researchers have the latitude to decide who to be included. There are 2 types of samplings. One is called purposive sampling. Say, my research focuses on dementia family caregivers. I know there's a difference between caregivers living in rural areas and those living in urban cities. There's also a difference between spousal caregivers and adult children caregivers. So I will purposely select caregivers from both rural areas and urban areas, and also make sure my sample includes spousal caregivers and adult children caregivers. Quota sampling can be used as well. Knowing the probability of each group in the population, you can determine the proportion of the subgroups in your sample. Say if your study population is nurses, and we know most nurses are female, but you want to oversample female nurses in your study. Deviant sampling is another form of purposive sampling, in which the researcher chooses the most untypical cases. For example, we found most cancer patients experience discomfort or side effects after chemotherapy. But there are few cases that respond very well to chemotherapy without any discomfort. So in your study, you want to make an effort to include those few patients with good reactions to chemotherapy. Snowball sampling represents accidental sampling or non-purposive sampling, which means you do not predetermine who you want to recruit. And it's often used to recruit difficult to reach groups. Say, for example, if you want to study women sex workers or drug users, once you identify one participant, this participant can help you link to another one, who may then introduce you to other people. So finally, it will lead to the needed sample size that you want. So speaking of qualitative data collection approaches, there are 4 major data collection approaches. The first one is through collecting documents. It could be public or administrative documents or private documents like journals. The second could be audio or video materials like photos, drawings, videotapes. What we will focus on today is 2 major qualitative data collections, which are interviews and observations. Qualitative interview are often open-ended questions used, and those questions are often involved during the interview process. And the researchers, they can have an interview plan, but they do not necessarily stick to preset questions. Depending on the research purpose, interview questions can be delivered in 3 ways. The first way is through informal conversational style, like just we talk. That's often used in ethnography studies. So you do not have any pre-planned or anticipate interaction with the participant. And you encounter the participant and you start an informal conversation. And during the conversation, you collect the data. The second approach is use an interview guide. That is very common. It provides a list of major questions you're going to ask. But new questions can also be added during the interview process. It's commonly used in phenomenological studies. The third approach is called standardized open-ended interviews. If you use this approach, you stick to a predetermined list of interview questions. No deviation from the list of questions can happen. You cannot add or delete questions. Say if you want to do a program evaluation to find out how to improve the nursing care at the clinic, and for all the nurse participants, you will use exact same pre-constructed open-ended questions to get their feedback. There are two specific forms of interviews we are going to touch on. The first one is called life history or life story review. A life review is the interview asks a series of questions related to the participant's development stages. It often takes more than one time to complete all the interviews. And interviews not only focus on what happened in the past, but also the meaning ascribed to those past experiences and its impact on later life stage, even including its impact on the current health and mental health status of the participant. The purpose of life review can just be to document the participant's oral history of their life, or it can also be used to serve as evidence to help design a psychosocial intervention to address the negative impact of childhood trauma or historic negative events. The second different or specific form of court interview, we call it focus group interviews. Focus group interview aims to bring together a group of participants who can be stakeholders invested in a special issue or a group of people who share common life experiences. Bring those people together to have a focused discussion on the research topic. People will ask how many people should be included in a focus group. My personal experience, I would say 5 to 9 is good. A group of 7 is most ideal for me. If the group is too large, not everyone in the group will have the sufficient time to share their perspectives. But if the group is too small, it will not generate the group dynamics that needed to foster discussion. And the quality of the interview techniques should also apply here in the focus group interviews. And we typically use open-ended questions, and participants take turns to speak their opinions or share their perspectives. Some advantages of focus group interviews. Obviously, it's inexpensive. It can generate fast results, very flexible. And the group dynamics can bring anticipated results. It can empower participants who may not be willing to share their information in private, and they can trigger thoughts for each other. One disadvantage is that focus groups are likely to attract those people who are comfortable to share in a group setting or in a public setting. The researcher should make efforts to include participants who would otherwise not join group discussion, or find a different approach to reach out people who are not joining group discussions. Say, for example, you can do an individual interview with those people to complement the data you collected through focus groups. Also, group dynamics can be a double-edged sword. Participants may feel pressure in the focus group, and they will not share their real thoughts or be forced to conform to other people's ideas. For example, if you put nurse interns, nurses, and your department directors in the same group, the nurse interns or the nurses may feel the pressure not to disclose their true thoughts because of the power differential among the participants. But a really good operating focus groups depends on a qualified group facilitator. Here is an example of a protocol for group facilitators. I recommend 2-person team. So one is a primary facilitator and the other is a co-facilitator. So co-facilitator helps set up the room, logistics, making observations or taking notes. But the primary facilitator will kick off the introduction, introduce the project aims, tell participants their rights, their risks, and their benefits of joining the focus group study, and even educate them. What is focus group? And then the facilitator should also stress confidentiality issues and be able to answer questions from the participants. So you can take time to read the focus group facilitator guide. So the second data collection approach we are going to touch on more in detail is called observation. There are 4 types of observation depending on the researcher's roles in this observation. You can be a complete participant or a complete observer or somewhere in between. I would say each has its strengths or limitations. Being a complete participant may sound too intrusive, and being a complete observer, you may lack the ability to make a rapport with your participants. Participant and observer might be a better fit for ethnography design, in that the researcher needs to observe participants from an insider's perspective over an extended period of time. So attending their activities is unavoidable. You have to participate in some way. Observer as participant can be more common for case studies, grounded theory, phenomenological studies. You just need minimum interact with your participants and maintain a sharp observation. So data recording approach, the 2 tips. One is you have to record the data appropriately. And second, you have to record the data in a timely manner. You can either use the paper, pencil, or use a recorder. Regardless, you need to be very clear what needs to be recorded, such like the number of people in the focus group, the group dynamics, and their nonverbal expressions. Or you can use a voice recorder. Even using a voice recorder, taking notes is very critical. Record what you know happened and what you think happened. Each should be identified. So in the first stage, you may try to take some quick or sketchy notes, like words or phrases, and to keep abreast of what's happening. And then remove yourself and rewrite your notes in a more detailed way. Details can be very important. You cannot be sure what it is or what is not important until later stage you review and analyze them. Lastly, I will comment on researcher ethics in qualitative data collection. So there are some questions you need to ask yourself before you enter the field to collect the data. Is it ethical to taking notes without letting people know you're observing them? Is it ethical to not help, particularly as a nurse, when you see a severe damage? For example, if you see a child abuse or elder abuse or domestic abuse, as a nurse, do you have to respond to it directly? So those are tricky questions. There's no true or wrong answers, but the bottom line is, regardless, you have to document your rationale, whether you choose to fully disclose your study aims or you choose to hide some portion of your study aims. And document your rationale for the decision and make reflections on the impact of this decision. Lastly, I offered some reference for you to read later that will help you understand the concepts we covered in this section. Thank you for watching this lecture. I encourage you to take time to dig into the concepts and approach we covered in this lecture. In particular, I encourage you to locate and find the references I recommend in the end. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, and my email address is on the first slide of this lecture. Have a great day.